Lexie Natasha tweeted and was just saying a bunch about pride and how proud she was of this team. Have you kind of had similar emotions the last couple of days, and how do you balance that with it?
Nobody in the NBA or WNBA expected it. A player who doubted every shot she made and silently feared that today would be her release. She struggled to secure a berth on the team during her first 2 seasons. Then, in an instant, everything changed. In addition to having the biggest transformation in women's basketball history, Lexie Hull also became one of its most fascinating stories. And now, after going through Caitlin Clark's storm for years, she has finally shared what it has been like. Not the polished media version, but the real one. She revealed something that nobody really expected to hear before any of this made sense. You also need to understand where Lexie Hull was before Caitlin Clark came into Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Hull was chosen by the Indiana Fever with the 6th overall pick in the 2022 draft. On paper, it sounds like a dream. 6th place overall. 10 options. A Stanford graduate won a national title, 3 All-Pac, 12 honors, and the class and top 90 awards for her outstanding academic and athletic accomplishments in her last season. This was supposed to be the start. Rather, it became a struggle that most outsiders never really recognized because of the terrible illness during those early years. Not quite as good. They suffered losing seasons and missed the playoffs entirely, making them one of the league's worst teams. But Hull had to work hard to earn a spot on the team. This is not a situation that any young player wants to be in. Every single night was important. Every object has a bad connotation. She knew that she was acting fearfully. In the first 2 seasons, she scored. She was able to perform. However, but she was only one night. 6 points. The numbers are correct. Something was holding her back. Hull would later pinpoint that item exactly. She was among the few athletes who dared to discuss those formative years in public. Check out what she told Glamour magazine. I occasionally feared that if I didn't shoot, I might be benched or cut. Someone with outstanding credentials, a Stanford alumnus, or a top 10 draft pick are all lying awake, fearing that one lost chance may ruin their lives. That's what it was like to be on a losing team with nothing to cheer you up. She said, those early years were really nerve-wracking. A losing culture, no space for error, and no playoffs. There was too much at risk to win. As a result, everything was significant. Furthermore, that kind of pressure has an impact on more than just your shot. It gets into your head. It changes how you breathe, move, and think when you're on the court. But something happened that changed not only Lexie Hull's career but also the entire trajectory of the team and even the status of American women's basketball in general. No one outside was observing the Fever, and Hull was choking. The Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark 1st overall in the 2024 WNBA draft. In case you need a refresher, here is a quick summary of Caitlin Clark's persona at the time. Most honored scorer in NCAA basketball history, irrespective of gender. A player who, on her own, obliterated decades-old records, made Big Ten women's basketball a must-watch event, and converted Iowa Hawkeyes games into sellouts and nationally televised events. The WNBA as a whole was set to put the frenzy surrounding her, which had never been witnessed for a women's basketball player, to the test. It was sincere. Her status as the most important player in the league was cemented by her debut season's record-breaking productivity and fan interaction. The Indiana Fever suddenly became the most talked about, controversial, and well-respected team in the WNBA. Everywhere they went, there was a media frenzy, sold-out audiences, and national broadcasts. Caitlin Clark was spotted by Lexie Hull sporting the Indiana Fever shirt. It's rare to talk about Caitlin Clark's influence on her colleagues. There were additional factors to take into account besides visibility. There were other causes besides bigger crowds, sponsorship deals, and the cameras that followed them. The fundamental distinction between a game is the lines. Something that is essentially invisible unless you know what you're looking for. Caitlin Clark has a different view of the floor than almost everyone who has ever played this game. She's got a great idea for the court. She has a certain depth. The capacity of the defenders as well. Open perimeter shooters have no obstacles to overcome. For someone like Lexie Hull, who had been tormenting herself over every shot attempt for 2 years, it was very liberating. Hull's depiction of the changeover takes on new significance when you take into account what came before it. After Clark arrived, she said with confidence, "I know I'm going to get open shots, but I don't need to worry about whether they go in or not because I've put in the work to set myself up for this, and I'll live with the outcome." The numbers supported the type of freedom that is only possible when the pressure valve is finally opened. Hull had a 47% three-point shooting percentage in 2024. 1%. It was one of the top shooting performances in the league that year and a lifetime best. Her three-point percentage dropped back to 36 as a result of those looks. 7%, just as it had been in college before Clark passed away. The stats tell the story even more effectively than the words. But the court wasn't the only place where things changed. The plot starts to get much more interesting at this point. This is due to the fact that Lexie Hull and Caitlin Clark's off-court relationships caused controversy, garnered media coverage, and emerged as one of the most discussed topics in women's sports. When Clark was selected, many were somewhat concerned about how she would adapt to a locker room full of strangers. During her 4 years at Iowa, she had played with Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin, her childhood co-workers. When she arrived in Indiana, she was the brand's new face in a room where everyone else had previously established relationships. The concern was real. Would she fit in well? Would her attention irritate the current players, or would they welcome her? And in reality, this is what happened. Almost immediately, she fell in love with Lexie Hull. At the conclusion of that first season, they were hanging out off the court in Indianapolis. They were laughing, trying out various drinks, and sharing content on TikTok as if they had been friends for years. The WNBA traveled to Mexico during the Olympic break. There was no denying that fans adored the link. However, by 2025, the dynamic had developed to the point where it was known by a different name. When Sophie Cunningham moved to Indiana in the off-season prior to the 2025 season, what had been a duet became a trio. The league, 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 the league. Hull and Cunningham were Clark's well-known caddies at an LPGA Pro-Am event. On social media, they were always making fun of one another. In one of the most funny comments of the off-season, Hull joked to People magazine that Clark might also benefit from some sun exposure. When Hull posted photos of at Fever Media Day on Instagram along with a comment, he mocked Clark's lack of sun exposure. "We really are back." It was the kind of mocking that only happens when two people are pals. Parties are actually comfortable with each other. It also gave the WNBA fanbase a first-hand look at the player's personality. The wedding, which has been planned since Hull and Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder Will Matson became engaged in April 2025, will be attended by Clark, according to Hull. The two originally met at Stanford, where Matson was a standout baseball player before being chosen in the 6th round of the 2019 MLB draft. Hito Indianapolis went be with Hull after retiring from baseball due to a spate of injuries, which tells much about the foundation of her existence. Hull chose to face a side of playing with Caitlin Clark in a way that most people in her situation would have disregarded or avoided, despite the fact that everything has been cordial and joyful. And it's the part of this story that deserves the most attention. One of the most challenging seasons in WNBA history was 2025. Hull described Clark's arrival as having a certain manner, a seriousness, a focus, and an edge that suggested she had finished adjusting and was ready to take charge. How Hull told reporters before the season that Clark's second season was obviously different. According to Hull, "It's clear that she's here and ready to do business," and at first, that read seemed ideal. Through the first 7 games of 2025, Hull was playing the best basketball of her career, scoring more than 10 points per game and leading the WNBA in three-point percentage at 55.6%. At last, the Fever seemed to be a cohesive unit. Then the injuries started. Clark's quad issue caused him to miss a number of games. Then there was an issue with the groin. Then there was another soft tissue problem. During a game against the Connecticut Sun on July 15th, Clark sustained his 4th injury in only a few months, resulting in one of the most heartbreaking photos of the season. Clark got off the floor, placed her forehead on the basket structure, and sat on the bench with a towel over her face, seemingly holding back her tears after trying her hardest and seeing everything go apart. And, as a genuine friend would do when words cannot express their feelings, Lexie Hull was seated by her. Hull later spoke candidly about Clark's leadership role at the time. "Why me?" queries. She was frustrated that her body would not cooperate even though she was working harder than anybody else in the building. It was a difficult chapter. Despite Clark missing a significant amount of the season, the Fever prevailed. Before Indiana's ultimate loss, they persevered all the way to the WNBA semifinals, where they defeated the eventual champion Las Vegas Aces in a pivotal Game 5 that needed overtime. A key component of the run was Hull's two-way perseverance, which isn't seen in a box score. The command, the top play, defensive play, the opposing 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 play. She kept thinking about a subject that she finally decided the public should be aware about. Following the October 2025 Women of the Year feature in a beauty magazine, Lexie Hull made the decision to stop being cautious with her comments. She was one of 5 athletes featured in the magazine, along with Nalissa Collier-Jones and the Sabally sisters. This title was appropriate for a player who had quietly become one of the most respected in the league. Nonetheless, basketball's unrelated basketball statistics. Hull clarified that it concentrated on the drawbacks of competing against the most prominent female athlete. Because of the media attention and the people who have supported us since Caitlin arrived, I believe there is some envy over the Fever. That alone would have been enough to make news. However, she continued. In contrast to speculation or outside hearsay, she asserted that the Fever has heard what other teams have to say. According to Hull, teams and players in other locker rooms have told them they can't allow the Fever to win. It's a real target. Every team goes above and beyond when they play Indiana, and Hull has been at the center of it ever since Clark came on board. Because of what she decided to do with it, her reaction to everything is fascinating. She didn't voice any complaints. She didn't act like a victim. She bent closer. If anything beyond our control makes you want to beat us more, that's acceptable. Hull remarked. Yes, since Caitlin Clark attracts attention from sources other than sponsorship deals, fans, and photographers. If that's what it takes for you folks to come and work harder, then great. Everybody should think that everyone is giving them their best. I think we do get everyone else's best. Being in the middle of one of the most controversial situations in women's sports is handled with incredible composure. It includes opponents who declare every game Indiana plays to be a postseason match. Referees under a microscope are among them. For the past 2 years, Lexie Hull has lived in a world where people who have never been to a professional basketball arena observe, record, critique, and weaponize every move a great player makes. In a way that no outsider could, she has personally witnessed it. When examining Lexie Hull's entire path, there is something to take into account. She was a gifted player on a bad team when she first entered the league, and she experienced seasons in which every shot seemed to signify the difference between life and death. Her self-assurance was destroyed. It was unclear how she was involved. She had little control over the collapsing franchise that had been the foundation of her career. Then everything changed when the most disruptive force in women's basketball history appeared. Hull's self-perception as a player, the team's direction, the culture, and the fans. And rather of being overtaken by it all or fading into obscurity, she emerged as a key character in the WNBA's most captivating narrative. Lexie Hull has changed into someone she was never throughout those difficult early years because of the friendship, the social media moment, the in-court partnership, the poignant sideline moments, and the candid glamour interview. A household is a household, unsafe household. She was crucial because of her defense. However, those who frequently follow this league found her to be genuinely intriguing due to her resolve to be honest about what it meant to be in Caitlin Clark's reality. What will happen next is the question that currently hangs over everything. For the first time in her career, Hull started the summer as a restricted free agent, which alters the situation in ways that even she said she wasn't entirely prepared for. In Indianapolis, she has established a successful life. To be near her, her fiancé moved. She has expressed her affection for the fans, the series, and Indiana in general. However, sentiment isn't always important in the professional sports industry. Furthermore, the WNBA's collective bargaining position has created extra layers of uncertainty that no one in the league can currently effectively traverse. Any offer made to her might be matched by the Fever. Furthermore, it is anticipated that Indiana would go to whatever lengths to retain her given her contributions in 2025. With the message, please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss anything. Caitlin Clark shared a picture of the two of them on Instagram. Once you click the video on the screen, we'll see you in the next one. I get it.